I think if there's a general feeling about it, it was that you lived your religion. It wasn't something, you didn't go to this building one day a week and spend an hour. It was requiring of you to give your all to God and to strive to work out your salvation each and every day. Learn from the mistakes of yesterday, pick it up, move on. And I saw a group of people who were very human, but still striving, still struggling, and in many ways achieving the goals that they had set for themselves. They were very Pentecostal. They went right back to the church. So they spoke in tongues, they whirled, they twirled. They did all of those gifts of the Spirit. And that was apparent when the first Shakers came to America in 1774. But it didn't last very long. The man who would eventually come to head the church in America, Joseph Meacham, was a Baptist. And Father Joseph saw law and order a lot more than he ever saw spiritual gifts. Everything in our lives got laid out for a square gospel. It was very, very earthbound in that sense. And one of his dictums was, order is heaven's first law. Well, you can imagine that that worship was not orderly at all. And so he starts to quickly get away from that. And he's the one who introduces the dance steps, in which he had a revelation, and he saw that the angels of God were above our heads, and that they were doing the same marches and the same gifts that we had, but they were doing them more perfectly. So he introduced something called the square order shuffle, and then that develops into a lot of other things like the ring dances and all that. It allowed for a corporate worship, everybody doing the same thing at the same time. Now within that though, sometimes gifts still came out, and people would whirl occasionally still. We don't see gifts of the Spirit in those outward forms the way they did in the old days. It's not that we're not open to them, and if they happen, they happen. But I don't think that we look for or anticipate their arrival in our midst. By the 1880s, they start to write little things about the outward signs of faith, and that when there's a deeper work that's taking place in the heart, they no longer become necessary. For believers, all things are gifts. They come from God. And every single thing that motivates us is a gift. So that gift, died out. The gift of marching and dancing, that also had its season, and it stopped here around 1900. So what we have now is a much quieter meeting, but I think that it's a deeper meaning because the people are required to think more, to react more, and to really speak from their heart on some subject. In my opinion, a fatal mistake, and that was that in the 1830s, they decided to basically abandon trying to convert adults anymore and start raising large numbers of children in the hope that if they raised them from youth, that they would see the purity of the gospel, that they would want to stay and make Shakers.
Orphans and...
Right, basically orphans. Or and the Civil War really, really expedited that because there were so many children that were left bereft of parents, and fathers in particular. And in those days, single mothers could not make it. So they'd had to find places to have their children be raised, and the Shakers were often that destination. And then with the rise of all of those orphanages, Shaker communities plugged into them, and they started having kids come up in great numbers. Well, it swells the ranks, but really you have to start looking through it, and you start seeing there's really very few adults in any community, and it's mostly children, and most of those children don't stay. So every 5 years there's this big turnover of personnel, and it looks like, oh yeah, there are 50 members. Well, that's not really. But so when they started to do that and just rely on children to fill up the ranks, they lost a lot of what it was, the zeal, a lot of compromising going on to be able to keep these kids and to turn them into Shakers so that their communities could be perpetuated. We pray very earnestly, all three of us pray quite earnestly every single day for competent vocations to be brought to this way of life so that Shakerism will endure in this place we so lovingly call chosen land.